here. AOC did a 20-minute hit. It was really good. We're going to get to it right now. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez joins ABC. Asked about her political future, she says, anything is possible.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's been a huge week. What does Abdel El-Sayed's victory in Michigan say about the future of the Democratic Party?
I think that we are in a time of renewal for the Democratic Party, and it's tremendously exciting for all of us, for the big tent of the Democratic Party. We have really an ascendance of a young, inspiring, exciting electorate, energizing wave of candidates that I think really inject a new energy to the Democratic Party and add to the toolbox of candidates that we have to win the midterm elections, hopefully in November.
And as you'd seen progressives winning in a lot of these other primaries, it was often dismissed, people saying, oh, this is in very blue parts of the country, in big cities. But this is Michigan. I mean, this is battleground Michigan. And he won. Now he has the biggest test. Can he win in November? What does he have to do to win over those Democrats who opposed him?
Well, you know, I think that this really is a moment, not just in Michigan, but across the country, where the party is unifying. The party is unifying and it is focused on the November elections. We understand that our priority is the working class of this country. And we have to make the case that we're here to make people's lives better. And the Republican Party right now is jacking up prices, making housing impossible to afford. And we are focused on everything from healthcare to your grocery bill and making it more affordable for working people.
You know, this week there was also a prominent Republican, I mean, a very prominent Republican who said something.
It's kind of interesting that what has taken place is that we have become the serious ones, right? The left flank was often presented as like being childish, okay? Having pie-in-the-sky ideals and representing a totally unrealistic scenario that doesn't appeal to the broader working class movement, right? And that left media is also deeply unserious. Left media is deeply unserious. We don't actually talk about the real issues, all this stuff. And what's really interesting is it's actually the media that hyper-focuses on silly shit. It's the media that hyper-focuses on hyperbolic clips or negatively framed clips and demands that candidates fucking disavow Twitch streamers and shit. Meanwhile, when I have a candidate on, we're talking for 2 hours about policy. And the candidates that we have on our side are the ones who are actually saying, look, here is how we're going to solve these crises. Like, there's a real crisis taking place in America. Here are our policy solutions to said crisis. And the establishment Democrats, on the other hand, perhaps one of the greatest examples of this, are deeply invested in online beefs. They're very petty. You know? Like Haley Stevens is quick to support Abdul Sayed, and I really respect her for doing that, and I acknowledge it. Having said that, however, it bears repeating. It bears examination to look back at her final days in the primaries. Abdul Al-Sayed was talking about money in your pocket, money out of politics, Medicare for all. Abdul Al-Sayed was talking about universal child care. Abdul Al-Sayed was talking about Medicare for all. Haley Stevens was talking about how people were making fun of her voice and the cool kids online were making fun of her, and how, Abdul Al-Sayed was going to a Maoist pool party. Which side is the more serious side? I mean, seriously, pull yourself out of the situation. Forget that like one side is backed by corporate entities and whatnot, and just listen to the message coming from both of these parties. If you were just an outsider trying to comprehend American politics, you'd look at that and go, okay, the serious side, the adult side is the one that's talking about policies, right? That's what's so interesting about this dynamic. Yes, we have sometimes on this broadcast, certainly, moments where it's like childish. We're playing video games and stuff like that. But ultimately, if you look at the totality of like the advocacy, you look at the coverage here, I spend 8 hours a day talking about American foreign policy, American domestic policy. Whereas mainstream media, for the most part, is trying to find these like instances of drama. It's interesting that they have started doing slop when the expectation from the average American is that we cover slop and they cover the serious stuff. It's a very, very interesting predicament. It's a very interesting dynamic that we found ourselves in.
Things about wealthy corporations profiting, effectively fleecing Americans. It sounded a lot like what I've heard you said. I want to play this and see your reaction.
Sure.
They're making too much money, okay? Based on a shortage, they're making too much money. I don't like it. When you look at one company where they made 12 times what they made the year before, they got to give some of that back to the public, and they better cut the retail price, the consumer price.
Well, that was Donald Trump, obviously, talking about oil and gas companies and high gas prices. What did you make of that?
I think that everyday people, everyday Americans, we can see the very large gap between what Donald Trump says and what Donald Trump does. And so Donald Trump may be saying that oil companies are making too much money, but what Donald Trump is doing is starting a reckless war in Iran, having closed-door meetings with oil companies before his election saying, you know, you give me money, you give me campaign contributions, and I will do whatever you want. And so what we have seen, everything from Supreme Court rulings to Donald Trump's own policy, is what he is doing is jacking up the price, not just at the pump, but at everything that you buy that requires the transportation of goods. And so he can say whatever he'd like from the Oval Office, but I think people are more looking at what he chooses to do.
But that's a reflection of what he is seeing the people care about, what the people are thinking.
And, you know, to the president's credit, he comes from television and he's very responsive to public sentiment. And so he knows what he needs to say. But again, none of that is going to lower the cost of your rent or your mortgage. None of that is going to lower the interest rates that you're paying. None of that is going to make your grocery bill more affordable. And what we want to know and what we want to see is action.
All right, I want to go back in time just briefly to 2018 when you won. And you absolutely shocked the political world. We saw the pictures of you that night. You were obviously shocked that you had won. You probably don't recall this, but I interviewed you.
That's crazy. Northern Lion is right there. He's always there, man. Northern Lion, the OG woke.
Shocked that you had.
The Canadian agent. Like, what's he doing over here? You know what I mean? I wasn't even in the room, but he was. Is Northern Lion behind the growing socialist movement in America? What the hell?
Won. You probably don't recall this, but I interviewed you hours later, the next morning, and let's just play just a little bit of that.
Sure.
Judging from the reaction that we all saw of you on television, it seemed to surprise you as well.
It did. You know, I wasn't even checking the election results at all. I wasn't even following the precincts coming in. We had driven straight to our little party at a little billiard spot in the Bronx, and we hopped in, and I just kind of walked into a TV set, and I looked at the screen, and I saw not only the numbers, but what those numbers were, and it was a complete shock.
So, I mean, you sound there a lot like you sound today, but you've changed as well, right? How have you changed since you came in as this insurgent rebel at odds with the Democratic leadership? How have you changed?
You know, I think life has a way of really weathering you and adding to your context and your experience. It humbles you, but it also emboldens you in a lot of ways. And I think it has been the greatest privilege of my life to be able to represent the working people of my congressional district. And I think some of the ways that it's changed me has been to be able to come in with so many aspirations for our country, and then to have the remarkable opportunity to be in the arena and try to make the country a better place, challenges and all. And I love that it's hard. I love that I have to, and I get to engage with people from all across the country, elected officials from all across the country, to try to actually fulfill our dreams to guarantee health care to every American.
And you continue to push for change in the Democratic Party, but you're also one of the most prominent figures in that party right now. Your endorsement is incredibly valuable. I've noticed that this time around, this election cycle, you have not endorsed you've not endorsed candidates that were challenging Democratic incumbents in the House. And somebody took note of this. A fellow progressive wrote recently, the headline in The Hill was, "Today's cautious AOC would not have endorsed the AOC of 2018." Because you were obviously running against an incumbent. I mean, that's probably correct, right? What's your thinking there?
You know, I wasn't endorsed by anybody when I was running.
Your friends.
Yeah, just some friends. So
Yeah.
I wasn't endorsed by I don't think I was endorsed by a single elected official when I was running for office. And, you know, I think when I see so many of these incredible insurgent candidates that are running today, that's part of what makes me so proud of them, is that they do not answer to any master. They are not beholden to any corporate interest or any party boss. And they are completely independent, which allows them to be responsive to their communities and the people that elected them. And I think that in many ways that makes our movement stronger, when you have to rely on your own organizing skills. And I think that it has proven to be quite successful. And I mean, I see so many of these candidates, and they remind me of that moment.
I mean, but like in New York, you had the candidates that were endorsed by Mayor Mamdani, two of whom were challenging sitting members of Congress, powerful members of Congress, Democrats, and you decided to sit that one out. Is that part of wanting to work with your colleagues that are in the House? I mean, what's the...
Yeah, you know, I think we're all in different, you know, politics is also a workplace, and we're all in different positions to that. I endorsed, for example, in New York, on the state level, I endorsed a slate of challengers to incumbents in the Assembly and in the Senate.
Yeah, they did it was a cross endorsement. Zoran couldn't openly go out and stick his neck out and risk like political capital in the New York State legislature. And AOC, much like many others, could not go out and endorse against incumbent Democrats. So they did a cross-promotional slate. It was smart. I think that in the next cycle, we won't have to be as careful, right? We won't have to be as timid. We will be able to make more bold moves. Okay? AOC is not making a bootstraps pull the ladder up behind her argument. All I'm going to say is this, okay? There's an attitude of how popular this movement is and how much social and political capital exists for this movement outside here in this community versus the internal calculation that elected representatives are making. You're coping? I'm not. I'm just explaining to you exactly what it is. I'm telling you exactly what it is. I'm telling you exactly what's going on. One other example I will give you is, for example, actually, I don't know how much I want to reveal about this. Never mind. I'm not. Yeah, sure. It's fine. There is a strategy to what's going on that is a little bit different from DSA. But all I'm saying is there are varying degrees of bandwidth and allowance for different figures in different places. Elected representatives in the House of Representatives have a different allowance, at least from their own personal calculation, than the mayor of New York has a different allowance from his own personal calculation to someone who is outside of the political arena. And their calculation. Okay? The calculus is always different. I get to do whatever I want to do. I get to be as bold as I want to be. I get to push the boundaries to the best of my ability in ways that an elected representative cannot. And what's frustrating is that a lot of people don't understand that this is a broad coalition. Same with DSA, right? DSA is an organization, is a political organization outside of the Democratic Party, and they get to be as bold as they want to in ways that Democratic electeds would shudder to get on board with. And the more DSA grows in its power and its influence, okay, and a big part of that is coming from elected representatives that are DSA aligned or DSA affiliated or DSA endorsed or even DSA cadre candidates that win these elections. The more DSA's power grows, and the more DSA's power grows, the more influence capabilities DSA has in terms of adding pressure to establishment Democrats and having a say in the National Democratic Party's platform. This is simply put the broadest and this is simply put the most like reductive but broadest theory of change. Okay? And I think because change, especially through the political arena, takes an unbelievably long amount of time, most people don't even see those changes and those shifts happening and basically take it for granted when they do happen. One example I will give you is where DSA was and where the American political calculation was in 2016 as far as like socialism goes versus where it is now in only a decade. People like myself didn't exist in 2016, although I was still doing shit, you know. I didn't have a platform. There were no robust left media outlets out there that had competitive sizes in audiences to mainstream outlets. DSA itself was numbering in the 10,000s, not the 120,000. AOC was a barista in 2016. Do you understand? AOC was a barista in 2016, not a multiple-term incumbent Democratic representative and one of the most popular figures in American politics. So these changes happen over a long period of time. And a lot of people come into it at some point in the movement and just take those changes for granted. They think, of course, this was always the case. Right? That's the issue. Why are you forgetting that the Young Turks in 2016? Because the Young Turks is a prominent force, but I'm saying like it wasn't, left media wasn't where it is now. How is that hard to comprehend? It's like saying, what about Air America in 2010? Yeah, sure, it existed, but it was nowhere near the powerful force it has become. Democracy Now! Existed back then, too. Chris Hedges was around. Abby Martin was around. This is not a diss on the previous formations of left media. We're talking about the amount of eyeballs and attention and the amount of persuasive capability that left media fucking had in comparison to what it has now.
And I don't work in state government, which gives me a greater freedom to be able to do that and to assess it. And I'm very grateful, you know, that we now have a progressive movement that is in large enough numbers that, you know, it used to be that you could fit 5 people in a closet, and that was the caucus, and now we've grown into quite a successful movement.
She's right, and she's speaking to that change as well. She's speaking to that seismic shift and how it wasn't designed overnight. It took a decade of work, and there will always be newcomers, which we welcome, by the way, with open arms. But there will always be newcomers who say, "Well, this changed. Look at where we're at," and it's like, listen. This didn't happen overnight. There were a sequence of victories and a sequence of defeats. Okay? We didn't arrive here like that.
Wisconsin coming up next. Francesca Hong, who is the Democratic Socialists of America supported candidate for governor. You haven't endorsed her. Are you going to?
No, I haven't endorsed in that race. My focus has been in winning back the Congress, winning back the House, and positioning ourselves to have the best chance possible to win the Senate. So I've been focused on those legislative races.
What do you make of those controversial statements? I'm sure you've seen. I mean, she's, the Thanksgiving dust up. She says she doesn't, still believe that, but the abolished prisons, abolished police, which is also positions that have been taken by a lot of the progressive candidates who have won. How do you get around that? I mean, those are not positions that are supported by most of America.
I mean, I think that a lot of these races.
This Twitter account is so funny. Look. You've become K-Hive. Don't worry. One day you will also take it for granted, as you are currently. Okay? 48-month subscriber. I've seen your Twitter chirping as well. I know. You are who I'm speaking to when I say this kind of change doesn't happen overnight. Okay? This kind of change doesn't happen overnight. You say you are K-High for slightly left of center Democrats. Okay? AOC and Abdul say coalition probably with genociders. The problem here is you don't understand. Sometimes you got to eat shit. Okay? I do it all the time. Many of you don't recognize that in order to build a broader coalition, in order to beef up our ranks, we sometimes have to eat shit. Like, the question I have is this, right? The question I have is this. I am trying to move the needle to the best of my ability to help people reckon with the realities of genocide, to help people understand that, like, why Palestinians resist, for example, right? And as a part of that, where we're at as far as our numbers, where we're at as like mass approval, mass adoption, where we're at requires us to make these sorts of calculations. That's why I don't fault Zoran for, sitting next. It's not even electorally advantageous, Lamount. No, you don't understand it. I'm sorry, chatter. You're anti-electoralist anyway, and I don't fault you for it. You say you have a rational perspective on this. It's a bourgeois electoral system. It's a bourgeois democracy. It's going to churn out the same exact outcomes that are helpful for the bottom line of corporations, the super wealthy, the capital owners. So, of course, you're not as dialed in on the electoral aspect of this situation at all. The notion that a Barack Obama endorsement is not electorally advantageous is perhaps one of the dumbest arguments you can make. I say this as someone who's been endlessly critical of Barack Obama. You're totally ridiculous with that statement. My point is this. If you cannot recall a time when the mayor of New York or any prominent political figure would come out with a fucking video saying Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal and must be arrested, there's a reason for how we got here. And yes, it did take a lot of work. And yes, it did take a lot of victories and far more failures along the way. And if today you have Zoran Mamdani saying Benjamin Netanyahu must be arrested as a war criminal, tomorrow you will have the presidential candidate saying the same. And when that happens, you'll say this is not enough either. And that's fine. We need people that are even more radical, that will understands that the work continues, the struggle continues. I am one of those people as well. The only difference between yourself and myself is that I can play both sides of that aisle. I can be a lot more pragmatic than someone such as yourself. We have to be radical, but we have to be sensible. We have to be radical, but we have to be pragmatic. We have to be radical, but we also have to understand where the mass environment is, where the collective consciousness is. Because you look at the situation and you say, dude, everybody understands Israel committed a genocide. Was that the case 2 years ago? Was that the case 3 years ago? Was that the case 1 year ago? Everybody wants an embargo. It's electorally beneficial. Was that the case 2 years ago, you think? And even if that was the case, did we get anybody elected into positions of power that would actually keep pushing the needle? Many of you have criticized, many of you, radicals have criticized my participation in electoral democracy. We now have more than 8 figures that have openly signed on to sending an arms embargo to the legislature, sending an arms embargo to Israel, a commitment that is literally impossible to even broach. Some of you, unfortunately, sometimes forget object permanence almost, where you just take for granted where we're at now. You understand where we must go, and I agree with you on that, right? But you don't understand how we got here. You forget how we got here. We're talking about a pro-Palestine organizer that was literally kicked off of campus, who now represents the district that campus is in Columbia, Daria Liza Avila Chevalier. She unseated a 5-term incumbent, the head of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. These things are pretty fucking important. And if they weren't important, there wouldn't be this level of unbelievable pushback from corporations. So one thing that I always get sad about is that our enemies understand the significance of this moment, and our allies should too. Even our allies who are further to the left than we are. Okay? That's the saddest aspect of this, is that corporations recognize the danger of this movement. Corporations and the bosses, the party elites, the establishment Democrats, the consultants, they understand how terrifying this prospect is. The prospect of democracy, the prospect of moving the needle to the leftward perspective. They recognize it, and that's why they fucking open up an unlimited barrage of attacks. And I sometimes see people who are like, I'm a communist. And is this a psyop? Is the reason why they're trying to like shit on Hasan to psyop us into thinking that he's a radical? Not realizing that from their perspective, yes, my assessment and my statements are radical. Of course. Of course they see us as radical. That's what's so funny about the predicament that we're in, where, there's a small marginal group of people that are not fairly significant in the grand scheme of things. But it was this statement. But I don't want you guys to yell about this person, by the way. But he said that the reactionary mainstream media is doing its level best to trick ultras into thinking Hasan Piker is not a liberal entryist soy boy. I said, yeah, they're doing this to bait you into defending me, and not because they want someone to fucking kill me. Ironic, because all of these self-identifying ultras were, big Bernard brothers in 2016. My point always is change does not come overnight. We'll keep fighting for it. You can disagree. It's all good. But remember that our ultimate goals are aligned. You're PR-friendly radical. We need more anarchism radical. I'm not even PR-friendly is what I'm saying. I'm PR-friendly to you. It's the same argument that I present to people who are like, you're bastardizing Lenin. Brother, any Lenin mention in mainstream media is met by, he is the Soviet Hitler. Like, you guys are so lost in where you guys are so lost in your own echo chambers to a certain degree that you fail to comprehend for the average American. They're like, what? This guy's reading Lenin? It's like reading Mein Kampf. That's what they think. They're wrong. They're wrong about that assessment, but it doesn't matter. Do you understand? Like, there is no bastardizing Lenin in the eyes of the masses in the United States of America. They literally think Lenin is Adolf Hitler. Most Americans have been propagandized into having a negative opinion on Karl Marx, a negative opinion on Lenin for sure. And most of them don't even know who these figures are or what they've done. So the idea that I'm like PR friendly actually shows where you're at and how out of touch you are with not only the masses, but certainly where these corporate bosses are, right? Corporations do not see me as PR friendly at all. There's a reason for why they talk about me all the fucking time and refuse to have me on and talk to me on these outlets. Why do you think that is the case? Because they fear that if we were to have a normal back and forth conversation, that I would be cordial and they would have to be charitable to a certain degree. Or even worse, they would receive dunks and have clippable moments. Do you understand? Yeah. Donnie O'Sullivan says, a lot of questions on the Sunday shows about Hasan Piker. Here's some extended bits in a recent interview I did with him. There's a lot of concern in media about platforming fringe figures, but given the amount of time major media invokes Piker, it does seem to me it's about time he has a proper one-on-one tough interview on a Sunday show. That is spent. Suspicious M dash. I don't think Donnie O'Sullivan used the fucking M dash there. Yeah, I changed it from the Y to an I soundbite. I'm not convinced them pushing back proves this is getting gains. The Bernie-crats represent a threat to their position of control of the party. This does not necessarily mean a change of policy. At the end of the day, they pushed back on Obama, and even when he took control of the party, nothing happened, right? Yes, that is the case. And we cannot allow that to happen this time around. Okay? And who knows? Look, we look at Obama now and not who Obama was before he ran for office. You know what I mean? Maybe he was always slated to be this person. Okay? And Obama did actually throw out his base. Obama for America, Organizing for America, shuttered that operation. That operation was entirely dedicated to pushing the needle on at least a public option, if not something even more radical like socialized medicine, right? Here's the thing. We live in a very different time now. We live in a very different media environment now. We live in a very different environment where material conditions have worsened since the Obama era as well. That's precisely the reason why we have a lot more opportunity to advocate for our policies. We have a lot more people in our ranks that are invested in these causes, right? When Obama, let's say the charitable interpretation of Obama is he was a radical and the way he presented himself was real and it wasn't simply, this political calculation that he was making, right? Let's say that was the case. And then neoliberalism, very quickly he realized like the capacity to coalition build was far more important to get anything done. And he was like, these are the marginal changes that we can do. Let's say that in the most charitable interpretation, that was the reason. That was the That was the only outlet that he had to even deliver the ACA, right? I'm not saying this is the correct interpretation. I'm saying even in the most charitable interpretation of events, Obama falling short of the radical change that he promised that people were clearly demanding, people gave him the popular mandate to push for. He didn't have the same mechanisms. He didn't have the same media environment, and he did not have the same material conditions. Okay? So if there are candidates now that are running on that same hope and change agenda, they're running as open radicals. They're running as democratic socialists, for example, right? And even if it's uncharitable, even in the the most cold analysis that Obama was actually simply running on hope and change, and it was all bullshit. It was pandering to the base, and he recognized that popularity. He built that popularity only to squander that opportunity and didn't push for the changes that he ran on, whether it be closing Guantanamo Bay, punishing previous war criminals, or changing the trajectory of American militarism. Okay. If he was being if he was behaving as a pure politician, cold, calculated, no interest in making radical changes whatsoever, the environment shift is also going to demand those changes. Okay? The environment shift is going to hold to account, hopefully, these politicians to ensure that the failed promises, the failed promises strategy never takes place once again, because there are far more numbers. That's why I think DSA is very important as well, in order to hold people to account. Okay? You understand? And the more we grow in numbers, the more we become a political force to be reckoned with, the more possible those changes will be. Now, there's also the other side of this. Let's say we lean into a hope and a dream. We lend our support for a presidential run, and then we are betrayed. That also presents a unique opportunity where we change our tactics. I'm not saying we're going to get there, and my job and my belief system requires me to only plan for that possibility while simultaneously still maintaining revolutionary optimism. Do you understand? But from that betrayal will come a even more radical movement that will have to change its tactics. All the while, what you have to remember is we just continue the work. We continue to organize. We continue to be disciplined. We continue to grow our numbers. Because revolution is not spontaneous, and it certainly doesn't happen overnight. A real political revolution requires diligent organizing and creating the solid, disciplined, labor force-backed mass movement that can be at the right place at the right time to take advantage of the shifts that are taking shape in American politics and in politics broadly. That's precisely the reason why this movement has grown over and over again, and now it's beginning to have some kind of leverage. Okay? So we have to do our very best. People always forget the failures that took place before the inevitable victory. They fail. They don't see the countless amounts of failed revolutions. They don't recognize that, this movement doesn't grow overnight. It takes a long ass fucking time. You just got to keep having the vision.
Even right now, they'll have a tendency to be nationalized.
Yeah.
But these races ultimately are local, and all politics are local. My understanding is that Francesca Hong has made clear her present stances to her electorate.
Yeah, she's moved away from a lot
right,
of that.
she's moved away from it. And I have a local city councilman that has this saying, woke one was crazy.
Woke one was crazy.
also
Okay,
mentioned-
that's true.
And I think that what's important is that we have to assess what
Was it? I mean, did the
candidate is
movement go
saying
too
now.
far with some of those positions? I mean, you briefly supported the idea of defunding the police.
Well, I think that during this time and especially during COVID, there was a huge opening of the Overton window. We were shut down. There was some of the highest unemployment rates that we have seen because of those shutdowns.
Yeah.
And I think that the doors were really open in trying to entertain any and every policy that was going to get us to a better place. And I actually think that the discussions that were had in that time were quite fruitful. I think that when we talk about crime today, it's fundamentally different than the way that we talked about crime in bringing crime down, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that we all share in the goals of having as low a crime rate as possible. I think that, during lockdown, of course, rhetoric in that time is not rhetoric that we would use today. And I'm grateful that these candidates have the opportunity to present who they are to their electorate and what they're campaigning on in this moment.
Because and obviously the Democratic Socialists of America are having quite a moment. Mm-hmm. But you know how Republicans are responding. Let me just give you a brief sampling.
Sure.
I think that her response to this was also not initially not as dismissive as one would expect from AOC. Now, of course, AOC, so people are going to say oh, she fucking botched this or whatever. But I think she did a pretty good job of saying look, it was an environment of heightened tension. And there were some people who were looking for different ideals and looking for different solutions, sometimes solutions that could be considered radical. Of course, people who are invested in police abolition are going to literally say, that's not a radical solution. Fuck you for dismissing it. But I think that was a pretty solid response overall, because she doesn't even close the door entirely on dismissing people in our ranks. Dismissing people in our ranks. It's not dissimilar to my position overall as well, where I say look, I'm not a police abolitionist. I'm not a prison abolitionist, but I feel closer to that side of the political spectrum than I do, especially given where we're at currently with our understanding, the average American's understanding with crime and punishment, the draconian measures that we advocate for all the goddamn time, and the allowance that we give the police force to be as violent and as ruthless as they want to, with no accountability whatsoever. I think when I think about it, it's that's why my argument always is look, I think this is a broad tent regardless. It's a broad movement regardless. There's going to be some disagreements overall, but the reality of the matter is the average position, the normative position on policing and prisons in this country have to dramatically shift to the left position so that we can reduce recidivism in this country, so that we can actually focus on rehabilitation rather than incarceration, to ensure that people that have done crimes can actually reintegrate into society in more successful ways. Other countries have actually paved the path forward in much more meaningful, much more consequential ways, and we just choose to avoid that reality. We're so stunted in our vision, right? And the same with defund the police, abolish the police. For many, there are very different attitudes on what must be done, right? Damn, Tectone went off on you, little homie. You should apologize to him. Tectone? Why would I apologize to a generational rapist, brother? Are you okay? Rape Tone went off on me? I think you should have a little bit more shame to openly be yeah, my favorite content creator is a rapist who openly admitted in a court case that he's duping his audience into right-wing beliefs because he knows it's the bottom of the barrel, easiest way to make money. You're talking about a guy who admitted in a courtroom that he was making videos about me specifically to farm viewers and money. That is in the court documents. Okay? That is literally in the court documents. The same court case that found him to be, at least in a civil proceeding, guilty of committing domestic violence and even sexual assault. It's kind of a sad state of affairs that you're admitting that you are that malleable and you are that easily duped. But I believe in you, chatter. I believe you have the capacity to think critically, liable, not guilty. I apologize for the term I use, liable, of sexual assault and domestic violence. I think you can overcome this mental hurdle. Yeah, I saw this. Neera Tanden is now boosting far-right streamer Rape Tone, who has been credibly accused of sexual assault and who just had an ex-girlfriend placed under protection of a 10-year protective order. A Texas judge also banned him from owning or possessing firearms. And Neera Tanden, of course, is reposting that clip because her attitude is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And what she fails to comprehend, or maybe she comprehends but doesn't care about, is that a lot of my enemies, the overwhelming majority of my enemies, are fucking neo-Nazis and pedophiles and sex criminals and just horrible monsters overall. She just doesn't care. I guess it makes sense for her to find herself comfortable with working with sex criminals, considering that she worked with the Clintons, right? Her orbit is the original Epstein folk, and therefore the Epstein orbit is not a bridge too far for her, but more so comfortable territory. It's the environment that she's comfortable working in.
Let's call it what it is. It's communism.
The Commie Caucus is coming to Congress.
Communism is on the ballot this November.
We're not going to turn this country into a communist experiment.
Well, you can kind of get a sense of the theme, and obviously the president has said the same thing. But by the way, just a quick definitional thing. What, in your mind, is the difference between socialism and communism?
I think, to me, the fundamental differences, there's many.
Yeah.
One prevailing one is democracy. And I believe that democratic socialists are fundamentally pro-democracy. And we believe in the ballot box. We believe in respecting the outcomes of elections and governing democratically and ensuring that.
I mean, look, there's no defending communism in the mainstream, and this is the democratic socialist opinion broadly. So she's channeling the DSA line here, not just the old DSA line, but just even the current DSA line overall, regardless of the fact that there are many communists within the Democratic Socialists of America.
That the ideas and policies that are implemented are won through popular vote and popular opinion. And so I think that's why so much of what we focus on.
Yeah, she's the DSA. She's a DSA rightist through and through. She is not DSA left.
Is also making sure that we are providing for the majority of Americans, guaranteeing health care, raising wages, strengthening the right to a union. And
how would you answer this position? Well, I'm not an elected representative with ambitions of higher office. I have answered this question many times over. What do you say to people who call you a communist? I say, I don't call myself a communist, but I would never oppose that framing because I don't think the understanding of communism in America is correct. Communism is an end goal of a classless, moneyless, stateless society. It's an evolution from our current understanding of the world. Do you feel like that's a bad way to live? Do you feel like that's a bad mode of existence? I certainly don't think so. You know, how we'll get there or how we'll achieve it, I do not know. But I don't think that's a bad end state. I don't think that's a bad evolution. It's Star Trek. It's the Star Trek timeline. Americans think communism is USSR, Eastern Bloc, repression, gulags, the Gulag Archipelago. Look at the American understanding of, in the Western understanding broadly, due to the Cold War, due to the propaganda, due to Red Scare propaganda, is unbelievably terrifying. It's like very right-wing, very reactionary. But the reality of the matter is, of course, an elected representative in the United States of America currently is probably going to shy away from this moniker overall and not waste any bandwidth trying to explain away what it means, especially because they might organically feel the same way about it.
And I think that that's at its core what we're about.
Are you still a member of Democratic Socialists of America?
Of the New York City chapter.
The New York City chapter, not the national?
No.
And what's the difference?
So every DSA chapter is formed locally.
Yeah.
And so the New York City DSA chapter, those are...
I'm not sure what you meant by that. Yeah. I mean, look. Technically, every DSA member is a part of DSA. There's definitely a little bit of friction with national versus locals and with New York City DSA in general, but we hold the line, we hold it together, and I think she's what she's trying to say. Anne, is everything okay? Okay, my mom just like dropped a bunch of glasses in the background, so I was just like, the national too far left to be generally palatable? No, I don't think the national DSA is too far left to be generally palatable, but I do think that the national platform comes from the national convention where everybody goes and votes on what the DSA's program, what the DSA's platform is going to be. And I do not oppose it. I do not oppose it at all. I'm in favor of it, even if I have disagreements. At the end of the day, look, I'm not even a DSA member, right? I'm an outsider. So I'm being very careful with what my opinions are on the matter. DSA is not the Democratic Party. The DSA's goals are not to revitalize the Democratic Party. The DSA's goals are not to propagandize at the behest of the Democratic Party. There's many different caucuses, many different factions, many different ideological tendencies within the DSA. The national program is voted on democratically. However, the ultimate goal of the Democratic Socialists of America is to broadly move America through a process of reforms and maybe even a real political revolution in the long term to a socialist setting, to a socialist organization of the economy. So, of course, the national platform is always going to be a little bit more to the left, a little bit more radical than what the electoral, the electoralist wing of the party is pushing for.
Folks that it's kind of like your local union chapter.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So, because I know there was that strange moment in 2024 when the national chapter took away your endorsement.
Yes.
But I was looking through the DSA program, and this is the national program. I'm sure you've seen the document. It was adopted just a few months ago. But some of the positions here: defund the Department of Defense, close overseas military bases,
I'm not DSA national.
Abolish the police and prison system, grant amnesty to all immigrants in the U.S., replace the Supreme Court and executive judiciary with a chosen by lower to Congress, abolish the Senate, public ownership of corporations.
By the way, there's some incredible bangers here. Abolish the Senate, banger, public ownership of the largest corporations and essential industries. Oh, I'm nutting. As much as I have critiques of abolish the police or abolish the prisons, and it's not like not the biggest issue of all time, especially considering that I think that is a far better moral goal to move in the direction of than the current situation that exists. I mean, dude, this stuff is so fucking good. I mean, this stuff is incredible. I'm glad that it's being talked about. I wish that DSA electeds would be a little bit more, like, would lean into it a little bit more. I know Oliver would if he is elected for sure. But like, this should be our North Star for sure. Like, this is, in some ways, this is a people-backed Project 2025, right? And instead of like corporations and their stooges getting together in a cigar smoke-filled back room where they design American society and where the Republican Party should be headed in the direction of, this is a national program, a national platform that is dreaming of a better future. And it's important for, I think, the largest advocates of this program, this platform, like myself and even some electeds, to at least start getting people to be more open-minded about it, right? Because there's elements in here that are unbelievably beneficial in the long run, and I don't think we should shy away from, like, I just don't, what I'll say is this, I find it sad that we always have to stunt our imagination. We always have to kneecap ourselves, that we can't dream of a better future. You know what I mean? Like, what is that dream? Because depending on the perspective or depending on the timeline, it was an impossible dream to hope for a free Palestine, for example. And now that dream is achievable, right? It's closer than ever before. So it's good. It's good to have moral convictions. It's good to dream of a better future. You know? You ask for as much as you can, and then you get back to the drawing board when your opposition tries to kneecap your movement. It is what it is.
And essential industries. I mean, those are some positions that you're going to be hearing a lot about this fall from Republicans.
And I think we're also going to be hearing a lot about Donald Trump's commitment to getting us into a reckless war in Iran, his collaboration with big companies to make sure that everything from groceries to rent stay sky high. And I think that people are
like, this is the left position, which in my opinion is like super serious, right? This is the left position right now, is like, we want to move the economy in this direction. What is the right-wing position? Enes Kanter joining the WNBA to be like, is that transgender? Like, that's what they're doing. They're fucking charlatans, man. They're charlatans. Do you understand how ridiculous it is that you actually do not have a real clear-cut agenda on the establishment Democratic side? So we're taking advantage of that, and we're trying to say, like, this is our goal. This is the vision for a better future for America. This is what we want to do. And the Republican Party's answer to that is, transgender athletes. Remember trans? Remember transgender athletes? Remember that. Remember, get angry at the transgender athletes. And it's fucking ridiculous. It's so deeply fucking unserious.
less interested in these academic debates, and they're more interested in how we're going to bring their bills down and make sure that they can afford to see a doctor.
But do you see, I mean, are those positions you support?
Who's stunting their imagination when you can't come up with an alternative police? Stop ignoring this, dude. Oh my God. Police abolitionists, please. Please, I beg of you, dude. How many times do we have to have this conversation and then it gets clipped by fucking right-wing think tanks and then they just like endlessly posture about this shit? Please, 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 I beg of you, okay? Here, dude, peep the badge. Peep the badge. It says the People's Police, okay? Peep the badge, little bro. It says the People's Police. All right? You see the peoples in front of the police? Peep the badge. A-okay. Okay?
No, but I think that this is a free country. Everyone can have all sorts of beliefs and they can organize around.
Yeah, peep the badge. It says the People's Police. Peep the badge. It means it's democratically organized. It's a democratically organized People's Police Force, okay? People's Peace Force, if you want to call it that. The Peacekeepers.
Them, and you're free to do what you like and, have conversations with your neighbors. But my job as an elected official is to guarantee healthcare in America. And that's what I'm focused on, and that's what I seek to do.
And what do you say to the moderate Democrats who say, first of all, that they are capitalists and that those positions are going to doom the Democratic Party? Because, again, they're not positions that are supported.
Yeah, I mean, of course, they're free to have their economic identity as they like. And, in terms of dooming the party, the idea that there's a diversity of thought in America among everyday voting people.
Did you already talk about the Kamala Harris endorsement for Abdul El-Sayed? A lot of big names were very disappointed that he chose to post about it on his Instagram. I don't know if you've already said anything on the topic. Yeah, I said it's good. It's great. Yeah, it's great. We need those voters, man. We need those voters. We need the unks and the aunties to come out in fucking droves. What do you guys want Abdul El-Sayed to do? Okay? What do you guys want Abdul El-Sayed to do? You want him to come out and be like, I refuse to take the endorsement of the former presidential candidate Kamala Harris? Like, what? Are you insane? You just say thank you and you move on, okay? Like, wow, I can't believe Abdul El-Sayed refused. First of all, I don't think a lot of people know this, it seems, but Abdul El-Sayed literally fucking already endorsed Kamala Harris. He was the first prominent Muslim figure in the state of Michigan to endorse Kamala Harris after the uncommitted movement, after the primaries. Okay? Abdul El-Sayed endorsed Kamala Harris before Haley Stevens did, 2 days before. Like, there's this tendency on the left sometimes to treat this as like not a serious movement, but instead to treat this movement as a gate-kept like hipster thing. We got to keep the moral purity in our ranks. It's like, yeah, okay, that's how you arrive at like a 10-person reading group. Bring people to our side and try to explain our positions to them. It's that simple. You don't win anything with grandstanding. That doesn't mean that you should shy away. Like, if Abdul El-Sayed in exchange for the Kamala endorsement comes out and is like, actually, I love Israel and AIPAC is not that big of a deal to me at all, then yeah, then you can be fucking angry. You can be upset. But if Abdul El-Sayed isn't doing that, if Abdul El-Sayed is like even with the Liz Cheney shit, right? Liberals always said like, oh, Kamala Harris hugged and kissed Liz Cheney on stage. I said it. I got mad about this allegiance as well. But if Kamala Harris was like, I'm shedding the dead weight. Joe Biden is in the past. In the rearview mirror, we're actually the hope and change candidacy. We are going to address the crimes of the administration that I was a part of as far as the genocide in Gaza. I made it very clear. I wouldn't give a fuck about the Liz Cheney endorsement. And on top of that, I would have door knocked for her. I said it even back then. It's so ironic that people don't realize this. You know who doesn't realize this? The fucking liberal commentariat doesn't realize this. And it's the ultras that don't realize it either. I wonder if it would make sense for DSA to have two platforms, set of party principles with long-term goals similar to the current one, an electoral program that includes immediate policy provisions. It's difficult because none of their electeds, even the most radical like DSA and Larkin, will endorse the platform. It's not just an electoral project. It has an electoral project. Yeah, I mean, I'll just say it like this. People would still probably say, well, why is there a national party platform regardless? Yeah, Alex Kane says, to criticize Abdul El-Sayed over the Kamala Harris endorsement is to criticize him for trying to win against a MAGA right-wing figure who would vote to give Israel billions. Yes, Harris helped perpetrate a genocide, and yes, he needs to win black voters. That's the calculus. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yes, we know you are a reformist. We get it. I know he's doing real politics, but the Harris El-Sayed endorsements feel unnecessary. She lost Michigan. It's not like she's a huge boost to him, and her Gaza position alienates people he needs. At this point, his task is winning over the voters who are otherwise voting for Democrats. He doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. He just needs to do fractionally as well as Jocelyn Benson is. Unifying the party around him is a big part of that. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Hassan Piker, where has this form of electoralism brought us? This form of electoralism has brought us 120,000 dues-paying members in the Democratic Socialists of America. This form of electoralism has brought us now multiple candidates who are saying unbelievably radical things, including things that are more radical than I would say. I mean, Chris Rabb is like straight up somewhat of a police abolitionist. Like he defended that to a certain degree on the Scott Hannity program. I mean, these are things that were unheard of. These are things that if you were to tell me we would achieve 2 years ago, I've been looking at you like, nah, there's no fucking shot. And the alternative doesn't exist anyway. It's not like there's this robust vanguardist Marxist-Leninist party out there that's like really captivating the masses and have been able to organize outside of the electoral playing field. And I'm just like standing in opposition to that. You know what I mean? You keep saying we. Are you a DSA member or not? We is a broad statement of a broader movement of which even, ironically enough, places the ultras in it as well. Like if there was this broad environmental shift and it was clear that like electoralism was not even bringing in newcomers into this mass movement, and that there was already this like broad appetite for revolutionary change, and that the masses were class conscious and they were organized and they were militant in their organizing and militant in capturing power. Obviously, there would be a very different calculation in front of us. I think it just goes back to, it always goes back to like where the masses are in America. Like they're still unbelievably reactionary. They're still negatively polarized. They're still fairly antagonistic to even the term socialism broadly. So it takes a long time. We don't even have a statewide elected yet that openly says they're socialists. Abdul's not even in the DSA, right? Abdul al-Sayed says he's a capitalist. So that's for many, I think, comes from their lack of ability to understand where the masses are in their interpretation of socialism. But I do think every day, more and more, as we mark more and more victories through the electoralist route, and as we bring more people into the fray, as we grow our numbers, I think more and more people will come to understand the goals here. That's also part of the reason why I say I'm not DSA left, DSA right. I don't identify with like one particular caucus, and all caucuses are great, and I agree with all of them. And even if I have, some disagreements overall, it still doesn't matter to me, because I look at the broader environment. I look at where the masses are, how they self-identify, and I recognize that there's still much more work to be done in terms of fomenting class consciousness, right?
People is a fundamental fact of our country. I don't think that we should be worried about what somebody somewhere believes. I think we should be focused on what our plan to improve people's lives are.
Another person who's been made an issue is Hassan Piker, who obviously endorsed Abdul Sayed in Michigan. You've been on his live stream, at least a few times. He's somebody who said, that America deserved 9/11. Now he backed off from that.
Yes, he's apologized.
But he said a lot of controversial things. Is he somebody that should have a role in the progressive movement going forward?
I think
what's really funny about this, by the way, because AOC has a really good answer for this, but before we even get here, what's really funny about this is like, ABC asking this question to AOC when it's like the reality of the matter is, although AOC will defend me here, like even if she didn't, it's not like I go away. You know what I mean? Like, of course I have, whether people say yes or no to this question is utterly irrelevant to whether I currently have a place, whether this community currently has a place in this broad movement, right? Like, they'll say like, oh, well, like AOC will defend me on this. And I think she delivers a really great answer to this question, right? But like ultimately, ABC or CBS or the Beltway pundits and their attitude about this mass movement is utterly immaterial to where we are. Now, of course, the other side of the story is they can ask me personally, which they choose not to. But yeah, Paul Bless says, don't know who put out the memo to flip this into dismissal of cancel culture, but they cooked. I don't know who did that. But they did cook. I agree. Whoever it was, they must have cooked real hard on this.
When we look at our elections that have happened, we have lost young people. Much hay was made about the fact that we lost young men in the last election. And many of the same consultants that are wringing their hands today were the same ones talking about how we need to go on Joe Rogan and we need to be not so, willing to engage in cancel culture. And I think that the flip-flopping on this is a tactical debate that they may be having. I think the fact of the matter is that Democrats can go on Joe Rogan, Democrats can go on Fox News, Democrats have a responsibility to build a winning coalition, and young people are engaging in mediums and conversations that we have a responsibility to attend to and be responsive to. And even right now, when we look at this insurgent wave of what is happening, oftentimes when people are doing that Monday morning quarterbacking and what demographics voted where, the big one that's being ignored is the generational tidal wave. Tsunami.
You see it in the polling. It is significant.
Millennials are not, punk kids anymore.
Yeah.
We're grown adults with mortgages and kids, and that generation is starting to be decisive at the polls, and there is anger at being ignored, sidelined, having our economic futures mortgaged by the generations that came before us on everything from the economy to climate, and we're taking the reins.
So we're almost out of time to get to your future. I'm sure you saw the poll in New Hampshire that had you as the leading candidate, leading choice for Democrats. First, are you going to run for president?
I mean, I'm focused on winning the midterms. I'm running for Congress right now.
But
she didn't say no. Oop, she didn't say no. I don't know how it bodes for her electoral prospects, but I love how much she just hates boomers as a political class. I mean, it's impossible not to feel that way. I mean, I'm sorry. I love my boomers in here too, but there is this, like Gen X especially, there is this like attitude I mean, it's still class politics at the end of the day, because like it is the only generation that has benefited from a higher degree of socialization and like the beginnings of a social democratic system that was eroded, especially destroyed post Reagan, right? But like they have all of the wealth still. There are trillions of dollars of wealth currently captured in the hands of these 65 plus year olds, and they're fucking holding on to that shit. They got the death grip on it, okay? They got the goddamn death grip on it. Trillions of dollars of assets, of wealth, just basically waiting to go to a bunch of horrible industries that are being designed specifically to cater to these boomers, to these Gen Xers, in palliative care, in old folks' homes. These are some of the most like corrupt institutions out there too, and they're just fucking going to milk. They're going to milk the trillions of dollars of wealth that's captured in the hands of, you know, some very, very old folks.
I mean, do you see this as something? I mean, I know you said you're open to it. Is it a realistic possibility for you?
I haven't ruled out the possibility, and I'm very humbled to the tremendous amount of support out there. I think that we have a responsibility to remain focused on the midterms and not on our individual aspirations or plans.
And running for Senate against Chuck Schumer, is that also something that's possible?
I mean, I think that anything is possible at this juncture.
All right, and then before you go, you did have a personal announcement that you made. Mm-hmm. It was interesting to see you kind of open up in, you know, on an Instagram Live, I believe it was. So tell me what it was and why you decided to do it.
I think it's important for us to normalize these conversations, especially in this political environment. The Trump administration has...
Remind us what the announcement was.
Yeah, sure. So I have decided to start the process of freezing my eggs. Yeah. And in this political environment where this administration is denying reproductive care to women across the country, from abortion rights to the ability to carry out a healthy pregnancy, I think it's important for us as leaders to have these conversations and share these processes, especially for working women across the country, and normalize them. Okay,
all right. Congresswoman.
That was cool too. And I know people are going to be freaks about this, but yeah, that was very cool of her to talk about. The fuck is this?
Larkin joins us now. Thank you.
Oh my God. Oh, this was goated. I already listened to this interview, pre-watch Piker, but this was masterclass, by the way. Larkin is